Good morning, everybody. This is getting to be like a habit. These morning drive videos, I kind of like it. Gives me a chance to get my juices flowing in the morning, talk about real estate, and say what's up to everybody out there on Facebook. What's going on, bro? So today I wanted to talk about, this came up yesterday on a couple deals we were making offers on. Brandon Barnes, how are you? Good morning. And it gets really tricky sometimes with septic systems, cesspools, and well water, which in our area in Pennsylvania is pretty good. Dad, how are you? Good morning. Surprised you're up. It's before noon, soldier. Happy to see you. Dad, I got your message yesterday. I'll make sure to get back to you. I'll need to do a little bit of homework to see if I can find something for you. But anyway, in our area, septic systems are very popular. As you guys know, Mindy Kaufman, good morning. We have a lot of different septic systems in this area. Really two, septic systems, three. Septic systems, conventional septic systems, cesspools, and then holding tanks. And each of those three are on-site septic systems. And the reason that's important for you to know, if you're potentially consider buying a property, especially if it's in a rural location, maybe you're using USDA financing, which is an awesome loan product. Good morning. And all my neighbors are out walking dogs this morning, and they all wave. It's crazy. I've never been in a neighborhood before where everybody waves at you. I'm normally a head nod guy, but everybody waves. It's pretty cool. So those three systems, on-site septic systems, each function differently, and they each have a different impact on your loan, and as it pertains to the location of the well. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit today because, when I first started investing in properties, I didn't know this information, made a few mistakes, and had some rough transactions with properties because of septic systems, cesspools, and holding tanks. So a conventional septic system is an on-site sewage system where you typically have one or two tanks where the house sewage goes into the tank, solid waste drops to the bottom of the tank, liquid waste is pumped out into a drain field, which is underground, needs to be by rule and typically for financing requirements 100 feet from the well. Septic tank needs to be 50 feet from the well. So if you can imagine what 50 feet looks like, depending on your well location, the tank needs to be 50 feet from the well, and the drain field needs to be 100 feet from the well. So that's a conventional septic system. You have one or two tanks. Those tanks hold solid waste. They need to be pumped maybe once a year at most. And then the liquid waste is pumped underground into the drain field, and then it dissipates into the ground. A cesspool is a little bit older system, still very logical to have a cesspool on a property as long as it's functioning. No reason to freak out. A lot of people hear the term cesspool. Let's face it, it doesn't have the most positive connotation to it. The word cesspool gets used a lot to describe, a not very nice area or whatever. So a cesspool is basically, the one that I saw was a hole that's dug in the ground. This one was lined with cinder blocks that are laid on their side, and it operates very similar to the septic system, except there's no real tank. It's more of a, barbaric septic system, mostly that were installed over 50 years ago. So the challenge with cesspools is once that hole in the ground collapses or has issues, it really can't be repaired. Where oftentimes with a septic system, if your tank leaks, cracks, breaks, or whatever, the tank can be replaced and you don't have to replace the entire system. So the benefit to the upgrade or the newer conventional septic system is if you have a problem with your tank, you can replace the tank. It's normally about $4,000 or $5,000, not a big deal. Cesspool is really just a hole that's dug in the ground, typically lined with some type of, man-made liner system. And when those break or get clogged, oftentimes, depending on what people put down their toilets, those cesspools can get clogged, either with tissue, anything that's put down the toilet that wouldn't really be biodegradable, or even baby wipes, stuff like that. If they're not flush safe, they can mess up a cesspool pretty bad. And then once that cesspool has gone beyond its useful life, typically you're looking at replacing the whole system, a whole new septic system, between $15,000 and $30,000, depending on the system that you have to get. So when you're buying a home, you should know the difference between those two. If you're working with a real estate agent, I'm sure they'll walk you through the difference of what those two systems are. You should definitely get a septic inspection. I know a lot of times when we're buying properties, we want to buy them as is and waive inspections to make our offer look stronger. I would strongly encourage you, when you're buying a property with a septic system, that you get an inspection, only because there's so many different variations of those systems, and if it's broken, it could really be expensive. Now, here's the key. Even if you test the system, you know that it's failed, you've accounted for the pricing, maybe you got a discount from the seller for the septic, your loan, again, let's go back to the distance between the well and the septic. I've had instances where I bought a property, I knew I had a bad septic, I budgeted for a new septic system, but once we did a perk and probe, which is where the township, the sewer authority for that particular area comes out, does a soil test to make sure that that piece of land is able to properly absorb the liquid waste that it needs to absorb in the area that you've designated for your drain field. Now, if they come out and they do a perk and probe and that particular location doesn't work, they may suggest a different location. And if that is not outside of 50 feet from the well or 100 feet from the well, you then need to get a variance. You'll need to get the township to write you some type of variance that tells you that they're waiving or allowing you to install this septic system within 50 or 100 feet of the well. And you have to sign basically a waiver saying that you're acknowledging the fact that it's not within the recommended parameters for distances, and then you release the township and the sewer authority of all responsibility for anything that could happen. So that's okay, but FHA, USDA, VA loan programs are very strict about those distances. So even with a new septic system installed, if you cannot install the tank outside of 50 feet away from the well and the drain field outside of 100 feet from the well, now you're going to have a problem with your loan. So something to definitely be conscious of when you're buying a property with a septic and well. What type of system is it? How far is it from the well? Okay. And then the other part is, if a property does not perk properly for a new septic system, you may only be approved, or the property may only be approved for holding tanks. So this, in my opinion, is the worst possible scenario. A holding tank is really just that. It is a tank underground that holds all the liquid waste, all the solid waste. It's basically the equivalent of what you would have if you had an RV and you had a tank under the RV, and as soon as it got filled, you'd have to pump it out. So depending on the size of your property, let's say you have a normal 3-bedroom house, you have 3 people that live there, you have 1 bath, you do laundry, and you get a 1,500 gallon holding tank. That 1,500 gallon holding tank is probably only going to last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and it would need to be pumped. Pumping of those tanks is sometimes around $200 to $250. So now with the holding tank, the only upside is it's very minimal maintenance. I mean, it's literally 1 tank, no moving parts. The tank gets full, it has to be pumped, that's it. If it ever breaks, it's $4,000 or $5,000 to replace it. Very simple, right? Problem is, you got to spend $250 every single month potentially to pump this holding tank. So now if you look at your mortgage, your taxes, your utilities, all that good stuff, you got to account for another $3,000 a year in expense. That's a lot of money. right? $3,000 a year, you could buy a more expensive house. You could save $3,000. So holding tank, my personal opinion is walk away. Sometimes we've seen them with smaller cabins near the water. It's really hard to get an approval for a septic system anytime you're near a stream or a creek or a river. So vacation homes, stuff like that. Holding tanks might not be the worst deal in the world because you're not using them that often. They don't fill up that often, and you're not needing to pump them every month. Maybe you're doing it twice a year. Then it's not a big deal, right? It's the cost of owning a vacation home near the river, near the creek, whatever you might be looking at. But for a conventional residence, strongly recommend no holding tanks. Bad idea. My personal opinion, if I come across the property that either already has holding tanks or is only approved for a holding tank system, I walk. I found that they're nearly impossible to sell. Most people are really concerned about the consistent maintenance that it costs to pump those, because it's an ongoing expense that never really goes away. As long as you're doing washing dishes, flushing the toilet, and taking showers, you're going to need to pump that tank on a regular basis, and it costs a lot of money. So, what should you know? Conventional septic system. You have a tank that's underground, you have a drain field. Know the distance between the tank, the drain field, and your well, okay? Very important when you're financing. If you're using any type of government loan, they're gonna require that the tank is 50 feet away from your well, and the drain field's 100 feet away from the well. If you replace a septic system, know that you're going to have to go through a perk and a probe process. Okay, the local sewer authority will have to approve the location of that new system. Sometimes that can take a month or so. If we're getting a lot of rain, they can't test the ground because the ground gets saturated. It's a very important test that you have to go through in order to get approval for a new system. So just know about that stuff when you're looking at a property. Ask your real estate agent anytime you're dealing with a property in a rural location, if it's a septic system or if it's public sewer. If it's public sewer, you got no issues. Any issues with the sewer lines are the government's responsibility. The only difference is you pay a quarterly sewer bill. So there is, some additional expense versus a septic system. You might only have to pump it out or do maintenance once a year, once every 2 years, depending on the township you live in. So that's it. Little septic information, well information for you guys this morning. I'm just about at the office for my 8 o'clock meeting, and hope you guys have a great day. Take care.